Diary of Lieutenant Commander Arata Kinoshita, Imperial Japanese Navy. Former gunnery officer, now staff observer attached to Combined Fleet Remnants. Selected pages found in a bamboo dispatch box near Nago, Okinawa, April, June 1945. December 7, 1941. Hashirajima, Anchorage, copied later from memory. The harbor is a forest of masts and black stacks. We are eager and disciplined. I write on the back of a maintenance tag because my proper notebook feels ceremonial. The men cheer when someone says the word surprise. Surprise, we are taught, is the knife that opens an enemy's chest. Surprise is a matter of nerve. I watch mechanics swarming over our aircraft like ants over sugared rice. They are tired but smiling. Everyone believes that courage is a finite spark you must strike at the right moment. No one asks what happens when the spark meets wet wood. When the reports arrive, battleships broken, flames taller than warehouses, our wardroom erupts. I think of my father, who taught me to light charcoal the patient way. Airflow, spacing, the simple physics of heat. I fail to understand why that memory intrudes. I put it aside and drink the sweet burn of victory. May 8, 1942, off the Louisiades, after Coral Sea. We fought air against air like two fencers in fog. Our carrier Shokaku returns bleeding but afloat. Zuikiku is intact yet emptied of trained flyers. The Americans lost one carrier. We disabled another. The newspapers will call it a win. I read the maintenance logbooks and find they tell a different truth. A young aviation petty officer shows me a chart he shouldn't have. "Sir," he whispers, "their planes keep coming in squads, as if someone is counting them from far away and adjusting. Our strikes are heroic. There's our time." A week later, I learn a word the Americans like: cycle. They land, refuel, rearm, and launch in a rhythm that is almost musical. We are proud of individual aces, they are proud of process. In the mess, I joke that they have turned courage into a schedule. No one laughs. June 7, 1942, after Midway. Our best plans are ash before noon. Smoke writes shoelaces across the horizon where Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and later Hiryu have burned. I stand on a destroyer's bridge and watch oil burning in colored puddles. There are no speeches here, only the work of dragging men from the sea and folding lists of the lost into smaller squares. In the days after, I volunteer for damage control instruction, partly to quiet my hands. We practice dogging hatches, shoring bulkheads, cutting wedges, fitting patches. The instructor, a quiet man with a scar that looks like a crescent moon, says, "Fire eats oxygen and steel. Procedures feed us back." I realize for the first time that procedure is a kind of courage that does not advertise itself. That evening, I handle an American manual taken from a crashed aircraft. Laminated pages, diagrams clean as a tea ceremony. A section on survival and rescue references equipment I have never seen in our service. Die markers, signal mirrors standardized by part number, emergency beacons. It is not the individual invention that chills me. It is the assumption that every man will have these things, that someone somewhere is responsible for the chain that puts them in his hand. October, November 1942, the slot. Guadalcanal teaches night as a weapon. Our torpedoes, long lances, bite like sharks. We move with the confidence of men who can still see stars. Yet the Americans increasingly behave like men who can see the future. Their destroyers swing as one in the dark. We cut into them and find transepts of tracers where no ship should be, as if someone on their side is drawing geometry on pitch. Rumors harden, radar. We train to counter it. Zigzag plans, silent approaches, narrow profiles. But it is like boxing a man who has already read your footwork. When we win, it is with audacity. When we lose, it is to rules we do not know. After the battle off Tassafaronga, I visit a wounded coxswain. He is 19. He says, "Sir, their shells do not fear, only orders." I want to tell him fear can defeat orders, but the truth will not leave my mouth. June 14, 1943, Truk Lagoon. Our pilots are brave in a way poets approve. They write letters before takeoff, as if to excuse the future. but they are graduating faster, flying fewer hours, leaning on instinct where practice should live. An Intercept report describes American replacement squadrons arriving with formations of spares, men and machines both. Their training pipeline flows like a river that does not care who drinks. We reassign veterans to the front because they're needed today. The Americans keep veterans teaching because they will be needed forever. We hoard aces. They mass-produce competence. In the wardroom, I say something that offends a captain. To them, heroism is what happens when systems fail. To us, heroism is the plan. He tells me I speak like an accountant. I bow. Perhaps the war will end with the accountants. February 1944, truck smashed. The raid is not a battle. It is a harvest. Their planes come like a tide, synchronized to tables no rumor had prepared me for. I watch a fleet oiler erupt and understand a new kind of target. We always shot at teeth, ships, and guns. They shoot at stomach and veins, tanks, piers, cranes. They never stop shooting because somewhere beyond the horizon their ships are being refilled at sea. This underway replenishment is a phrase that tastes of iron. We take coal like a village. They take fuel like an empire. I read captured reports, CIC, Combat Information Center, rooms where radar, radio, lookouts, and maps are fused, where a lieutenant with grease pencil and headset is temporarily more useful than a battleship captain who swears well. I draw one on paper and label the stations. It looks like a human mind glued together from many smaller minds. It looks like the opposite of genius. October 24th, 1944. Battle off Cape Engano. Notes from Phantom Fleet. We sortie decoy carriers to draw American heavies away from Leyte Gulf. Strategy, a last trick. The men on our flight deck know they are the bait. They do not flinch. When the American air groups arrive, their attack is not a dogfight, but a workflow. Dive bombers peel in disciplined spirals. Torpedo planes fence the shallows. Fighters pin our top cover in place, with vectoring from ships that cannot even see us. Later, I learn a phrase, fighter director officer. A junior man with a clock in his head and a screen before his eyes tells pilots when to turn, when to climb, when to cut power, and this saves lives like a surgeon's hand. Our courage is immaculate and insufficient. I write that sentence and close the notebook for a day. April 5th, 1945, off Okinawa. The sea is gray-white where destroyers cut it thin. The Americans station radar pickets like sentries in a circle. Each picket has escorts and fighter cover humming overhead. Our special attack units go out in pairs and threes, and sometimes they do not return because they have accomplished what they set out to do, and sometimes they do not return because they were eaten by a net. I stand on a bluff and watch tracers rise in three colors: shipboard guns, Army guns ashore, and the thin, bright sewing needles of interceptor streams. The sky is a loom, and our planes are thread that tears. I read a translated American maintenance memo. Every combat sortie is followed by debrief. Every debrief produces action items. Action items are assigned owners and deadlines. The document is so dull it is obscene. I imagine the clerk who typed it will live to be 70. April 7th, 1945, the last sortie of Yamato. We listen to the radio. She goes to sea with half-fueled tanks and a full heart, to beach herself on Okinawa like a sword meant to snap. American submarines and planes find her, because of course they do. They commit no rashness, avoid worship, and do the work in layers. Torpedoes to limp her, bombs to break her back. Our men on the island cheer each report of hits scored by our aircraft. Later, they fall silent together in the canteen when a static, thick voice says the big ship has rolled. I once believed courage could bend steel. Now I believe numbers do. Not numbers alone. Not the numbers that exist only on flags and posters, but the numbers buried in shipping schedules, pilot syllabi, spare parts lockers, depot throughput, 1,000 invisible checklists marching ahead of every bullet. April 10th, 1945, Field Hospital, Nago. A boy from a coastal battery asks me, "Sir, are we brave?" "Yes," I tell him, and I mean it. Then why? He cannot finish the question because his bandages itch and he is ashamed of the tears that come with sleep. Because the other side has built a world where the brave and the tired and the average all fight together without tripping. He blinks, not understanding, and I add, they have arranged things so that even their mistakes report to someone. He laughs, genuinely, the way young men laugh at professors. Then thanks me for the cigarette. Perhaps I'm only writing for ghosts. April 16, 1945, night inspection, northern Okinawa. The battalion commander asks me to review a cave supply dump. What I see frightens me more than enemy planes. Ropes without tags, crates without manifests, men who memorize what a label should do because there are no labels. We are courageous and improvised. Improvisation saved us in the Solomons. Now it kills us by inches because the pace is too fast for genius and the enemy is too thorough for luck. I think of an American pilot I met at Shanghai in 1937 before the hatred became air itself. He observed our ceremonial archery and said, with admiration, "You think with your whole body." I realize the Americans have learned to think with their whole country. Their battlefield is not the only place they fight. Their factories and schools and petroleum planters all occupy the same map, though they cannot see it. April 22, 1945, the box. I buy a bamboo dispatch box in the village and line it with oilcloth because paper deserves dignity even when men do not. In it I place the diary, a photo of my wife at Hakone holding a blue umbrella, and a small copy of the Naval Engineers Catechism that we were given at Adajima. Slow is smooth. Smooth is fast. How I wish our leaders had loved that sentence as much as they loved a decisive stroke. I have been asked to ride with a liaison group to the southern sector. The road is unsafe in daylight, more unsafe at night, and perfectly disastrous at dawn, which is when we will go. I am to carry answers to questions the front no longer has time to ask. April 24, 1945, addendum, what we misunderstood. I write this entry as if it were a report I could send backward through time. We mistook fearlessness for preparation. A pilot willing to die will not automatically find his target, penetrate a radar screen, and strike a vulnerable seam. A pilot inside a directed system might. We believed excellence could be hoarded. We fed our finest of the front line and so starved the schoolhouse. The enemy kept their masters in the schoolhouse and multiplied their good enough until it became overwhelming. We celebrated surprise and neglected endurance. Our greatest victories were coups de main. Their greatest advantage was routine. The coup exhausts, routine replenishes. We rode on craftsmanship while they rode on interchangeability. Our engines were hand-tuned and fickle. Theirs were standardized and swappable. A squadron cannot plan around temper, only around parts. We treated logistics as a servant. They made it a general. We asked our supply to admire our plans. They asked their plans what supply could guarantee. Write these on the inside of your eyelids, Erida, that you may sleep and finally understand. April 26, 1945, rain. A courier brings American leaflets promising food to civilians who evacuate certain zones. We label them to seek, but I note the fonts, the coordinates, the serial numbers that imply an inventory even of words. Somewhere a clerk counts mercy. I looked for comfort in poetry and found it in a spreadsheet I could not read. April 30th, 1945. The sentence, I owe myself. I have delayed this line for months, the way a man delays entering cold water. Courage cannot defeat American systems. I do not mean courage is useless. I mean it must be spent inside a machine that deserves it. When courage fires a pistol of one round against a factory of reloads, it becomes nostalgia. When courage staffs a checklist and a dock and a flight schedule and a debrief, it becomes a storm. I will carry this diary south tomorrow. If I do not return, let the box find a reader who understands that defeat is not a rumor spread by cowards, but the sum of arithmetic done more honestly by the other side. The rain stops. For a minute, the cicadas are louder than the guns. Akka. We depart before dawn in a battered truck with canvas sides that smell of mildew and cordite. Our driver, Petty Officer Sagawa, ties a white cloth around the steering wheel to keep the split leather from biting his palms. Beside him, a medic cradles a box of sulfa packets like a child. I sit in back with two runners and a crate of orders in oilskin envelopes. None of US wears rank that would interest a sniper. The sky is the color of unpolished tin. Our route threads between escarpments and stone-walled Vemon fields. Twice we abandoned the road for a goat path to avoid shell craters filled with rain. Once we stopped for a column of civilians, women hunched under bundles, children carrying lacquer bowls as if the war might ask for soup. A grandmother bows to us. The medic bows back, ashamed, perhaps, to be alive and moving while others carry their houses in baskets. At a culvert, the driver brakes. We peer through scrub at the sea. It is not a sea. It is a parking lot designed by Poseidon. Ships to the horizon, each one in a place that is obviously its place. The nearest are squat and ugly, magnetic in their utility. LSTs with mouths open as if to swallow beaches. Between them weave barges like beetles. Farther out, taller silhouettes. Cruisers, battleships, carriers whose flat tops look like factory roofs. The water itself is marked with buoys and temporary lights, a grid laid over nature. We watch an LST lower its ramp and cough out tanks the way a train coughs out passengers, exactly where a platform expects them. The medic whispers, not to me, but to something inside himself. How do they keep count? The question is good. Even in awe, I find myself making lists. A ship that only carries gasoline. A ship that only carries mail. A ship that only repairs ships that only repair other ships. A chain of specific strengths. Courage cannot build this. Courage may drive the forklift. It cannot design the warehouse. We move on. May 3rd, 1945, radar pickets. I am taken to a battery commander who wants to show me what he calls the monsters, and I prepare my face for a lecture on steel. Instead, he points me toward specks. Out there, he says, handing me a telescope. Little destroyers with big eyes. Through glass, I find them one by one. Radar pickets hanging on the edges of the kill zone like baited hooks. When our special attack flights come in low, fighters fall from unseen places and the little ships draw fire like lightning rods. He explains the rotation. Fresh pickets take station at dusk. Smoked and dented ones retire to a tender that exists for no nobler purpose than to change radar tubes and fill coffee urns. Even the heroism of those picket crews is scheduled, relievable, contained by a system that knows men break. We try a noon strike. From a ravine, I dare to watch the geometry. Our two planes flash through the gap with the violence of certainty, and for a heartbeat, it seems the trick will work. Then the picket screen lights. Code words, vectors, angles. Enemy fighters arrive from behind like a door closing in reverse. My stomach drops at the precision. The sea mutters afterward as if discussing us. That evening, a runner reports that the Americans give each picket an alternate call sign if the primary is jammed. I write this down and hate how impressed I am. May 7th, 1945, the hospital ship. A nurse from a cave ward comes to fetch me. Why me? To witness something she cannot carry alone. We pick our way to a sheltered cove where a white hull lies at anchor. Red crosses squared like kanji strokes. Boats scud between ship and shore, each returning with stretchers. They do not take our soldiers. They take civilians we have told to hide because the ship is protected by conventions that still, somehow, operate. On deck, sailors operate winches and gurneys. They wear aprons like bakers. A petty officer records every admission on a board that wipes clean and fills again. When a mother cries, a woman in a dark uniform produces chocolate and calm, two medicines that literature underestimates. I do not salute. I stand with my hands behind my back in the posture of an intruder in a monastery. I had expected pity to make me angry. Instead, it makes me analytical. This ship is not a saint. It is a node. It exists because someone at a desk knew numbers. Burns per week, bandages per patient, steam sterilizer throughput, calories required for recovery, the shipping tonnage of mercy. The sailor with the chalk does not know he is a miracle. He only knows his column is out of space and he must start a new one. At dusk, the crosses glow under floodlights and the ship hums like a hive. The cove smells of ether and brine. On the way back to the cave, The nurse asks what I saw. A system that refuses to let kindness be an accident, I say. She nods once and does not speak again. Perhaps she will cry later. Perhaps she is already empty. May 11th, 1945, a CB road. If an army marches on its stomach, this one paves with it. I walk a mile of brand new road in an hour because I want to confirm a rumor. They built it in one. It is not beautiful. Crushed coral, rough culverts, culch that squeaks under boots, but it is there. At intervals stand squat men in denim, the CBs, with bulldozers and graders that have names painted on the sides. Agnes, Dorothy, Fury. A sergeant explains, the names are jokes, but the schedule is scripture. A convoy rolls past on the fresh track before the last roller has finished. A choreography of fuel, rations, artillery ammunition, and something called Class 6 that I keep seeing on crates and never decode. We believe the island would hold us like cupped hands. They will turn it into a machine while fighting on it. The island and the plan will become a single noun. That night, I copy an American motto into my diary. Can do. I underline it, then add, perhaps unfairly, because they plan to. May 15th, 1945, the CIC. I barter cigarettes for a look inside an American Combat Information Center. Not literally inside, of course, but a glimpse through the shell-smashed hatch of a destroyer that limped close to shore for repair. A corpsman sees my curiosity and, assuming I am another kind of technician, points without fear. A dim room. Men with headphones. A circular screen where ghosts crawl. Aircraft, shells, perhaps weather, perhaps luck. At the center stands a lieutenant with a greased-back head and a voice that never becomes a shout. He has a long stick and short list. He calls headings as if hearing them from the future. A rating repeats each order. Someone else repeats the repetition. In any other context, it would be farce. Here it is insurance against noise and fear. In our fleet, the captain is king and the XO is crown prince. In this room, the hierarchy collapses into function. Not ranklessness, but a ranking of tasks. I realize, with a small physical pain, that this is what we mean when we say the enemy thinks with his whole country. May 19th, 1945, After Action Alchemy. We intercept paper from a shot-down Avenger wrapped around a chocolate bar. A debrief form. Boxes to tick. Lines for lessons learned. A space labeled immediate changes. At the bottom, distribution, squadron, group, fleet. So that is how mistakes travel, on purpose and downhill. I imagine an error leaving one cockpit at noon and being banished from a dozen by sunset because someone formatted it for speed. Our own wisdom migrates by rumor and scolding, promoted slowly through personalities as if the insight must bow to seniors along the way. I try to imagine what a nation looks like when it routes pain through forms. Monstrous? Efficient? Humane? Perhaps all. May 23rd, 1945, The Battery That Lived. A coastal gun has survived longer than anyone expected because its crew has adopted a ritual I envy. Every time the gun fires 10 rounds, a man down in the magazine reads a checklist aloud, and another man signs his name to each line as it is done. Swab cool, inspect springs, inventory fuses, check the telephone line, drink water, breathe. They copied the routine from a manual found in a captured cargo. Maintenance for portable pumps. The gun captain shrugs. The device does not matter, he says. The habit does. I tell him he has built a tiny American island under rock. He looks offended, then laughs. If that keeps the gun alive, let it fly our flag, he says, and for a second we are comrades in method rather than nationality. June 1st, 1945, a civilian ledger. At a relocated village market, I see a woman reusing a ration card as ledger paper. On it she records salt traded for tea, a spool of thread, 3 nails from a soldier's pocket. The card boxes are perfect for her columns. I realize I'm seeing a mirror of my enemy's strength. Even we, pressured to dust, become clerks when we must live. I help her add a column for future to tally what has been promised but not delivered. She thanks me with a bowl of millet and miso as thin as honesty. June 7, 1945, the last trip south. We must carry orders and map corrections to a command post near Shuri. Our truck is gone, taken by men whose need was greater, so we go on foot with bamboo poles and packs that crush the lungs. Rain travels sideways. We sleep in tombs with permission of ghosts. Once at a ridge, we are bracketed by artillery and crawl into a skin of mud, so complete I feel baptized. Near the front we pass a field dressing station set up under corrugated iron. An American shell, I know the sound now. I hate that I know the sound, takes the corner off the roof and showers everyone with dust. In 30 seconds the station is working again because someone's job is to expect damage. He does not call for a hero. He consults a list. Move table 3. Sift autoclave. Sweep. Resume. Courage appears in the eyes of the orderly who keeps pressure on a wound while the roof changes shape. But his courage is used by an expectation, not squandered by an improvisation. That night, I write by matchlight. Our bravery has been a bandage on a leaking pipe. Theirs is a valve in a system that rarely bursts. June 10, 1945. A letter home I will not send. Mitsuko. The Americans do not win because they are not afraid to die. We are not afraid either, and that is why we are losing. They win because they are not afraid to coordinate. They are willing to be replaced by procedures and to replace others without insult. Their pilots are names on schedules. Our pilots are names on monuments. Forgive me for such prose. I want our son to live in a country that rewards not only the charge, but the checklist. If I return, I will build a life so boring and precise that it produces safety for others. You may laugh. I will deserve it. I burn this letter after copying the lines here. Love is a logistics I cannot afford to expose. June 14, 1945. Inventory of a battlefield that works. Because I suspect the end is approaching, I make a final list not of weapons, but of connections I have seen. Fuel ship hose tank truck flame. No break when unplanned. Report form change training syllabus. A thought becomes tomorrow's reflex. Radar blip headset vector intercept. The shortest path between a ghost and a kill. Wound tag, triage bed home. Mercy with a map. Doubt debrief doctrine. Humiliation made useful. I add a sixth line, aspirational and bitter. Courage system. We never completed this arrow. June 17, 1945. The picket shadow. We try one more strike at dusk. A final arithmetic of sacrifice. Our 2 remaining aircraft lift from a strip of packed earth with the solemnity of monks. I do not fly. I watch through binoculars from a bluff where the grass has been burned to wire. The picket's radar finds them. I can feel it like an itch between the shoulder blades. A mathematics that sees flesh. Interceptors arrive early. Flak arrives on time. Tracers rise like written curses. One of our planes gets through and dives. For a heartbeat, the horizon acquires a new flower. Fire on a deck. A plume that argues for the value of our dead. Then hoses from 3 directions stitch the flame shut. A tug appears. Where did it come from? And helps the wounded ship retreat along a path that must have been designated before the first man in the first uniform awoke this morning. The system heals itself as we watch. I lower the binoculars and apologize to no one. June 20th, 1945, final entry. I have been ordered to carry a packet back north. Casualty tallies, ammunition requests, the usual proof that a war has managers even at the end. The road crosses an open saddle where the wind always smells of salt. I have seen too much to believe I will cross it twice. If these pages are found, I ask only that they be read with the respect a defeated man owes truth. Courage is the salt of nations. Without it, the soup of duty is thin. But salt alone is not a meal. We prize a moment. The perfect shot, the clean kill, the dramatic sortie, and we accuse the enemy of cowardice for preferring the machine. We were wrong. Their machine was a choir that taught ordinary voices to sing overwhelming chords. In that choir, courage did not strut, it harmonized. I lay out my effects in the bamboo box. Diary, my wife's photograph, the engineer's catechism. I add a 4th item, a ration card with empty boxes stolen from a field kitchen, because it is the most honest flag of this war. It is a promise that someone will count until the counting is done. If I cross the saddle, I will write again. If I do not, Let the next reader finish the sentence I have finally learned to say without shame. Courage can start a war, but only systems can finish one. The wind is rising. Somewhere offshore, a whistle blows 3 times and is answered by another at exactly the right interval. Ego. Aka. Postscript. Translator's note, 1951. The bamboo box was recovered by a farmer clearing brush near Nago. The last pages were stained but legible. There is no record of Lieutenant Commander Kinoshita in repatriation lists. The hospital ship he described in May anchored off Nakatha Bay is confirmed by Allied logs. A destroyer with a reconstituted CIC came into repair there on the date he noted. The diary's precision about schedules and forms made it useful to historians and to engineers who returned from war determined to build peacetime systems with the same humility toward detail.